This meeting to order. We are in the third meeting of the House of Commons Standing Committee on Science and Research. Tonight we have a couple witnesses that have joined us, and that I know I'm excited to hear their presentation, and look forward to rounds of questioning here later on this evening. We are going to start with 6-minute presentation by, first off, Dr. Runte. You have 6 minutes. You have the floor.
Good evening. Établi il y a 25 ans.
Established 25 years ago, the FCI has been investing in
enable researchers at Canadian universities, colleges, and hospitals to think big, innovate, and lead. The CFI is an independent, not-for-profit organization operating at arm's length from the government. We invest on behalf of the Government of Canada 40% of the total costs of infrastructure projects, with the province's private and not-for-profit sectors covering the remaining 40%. This is an important contribution to nation building that creates at the same time a world-class research ecosystem. Since its creation, the CFI has committed more than $9 billion for over 12,000 projects at 170 research institutions in 80 municipalities across the country. Adding partner contributions, this translates into over $20 billion. CFI investments have supported the emergence of fields of research as diverse as clean energy, quantum computing, and precision medicine. For example, the
Photonic Center from Université Laval is at the heart of a new industrial sector that is focused entirely on the use of sophisticated lasers and that brings together 70 companies and research centers. It employs over 3,000 highly qualified people in the city of Quebec.
With the research granting councils who fund individuals, while the CFI funds institutions. Growth in our largest research institutions means that Canada can rival the best in the world. The universities of Toronto, UBC, and McGill rank among the top 50 in the world, demonstrating the talent, creativity, and global reputation of our researchers. The cumulative impact of our investments has the power to catalyze and transform the economy of regions. For example, vintners in British Columbia and the Niagara region depend on research to develop mold and cold-resistant vines. The CFI was one of the first investors in the Perimeter Institute in Waterloo, then a largely agricultural region. Today, this extraordinary facility welcomes researchers from around the world and is surrounded by a prosperous high-tech community where quantum research is poised to break new ground in collaboration with researchers in Montreal, Sherbrooke, and Vancouver. The provinces have been central to the success of the CFI. When we consulted about the possibility of a biomedical research fund, they all wanted to make sure their researchers were equipped to respond to future outbreaks of infectious disease and to lay the groundwork for a vibrant life science sector in Canada. Today, we've learned that we must do more than collaborate internationally. At times, when borders close, we need to be independent and develop a supply chain that goes from ideas and discovery to manufacturing and the commercialization of innovation. Nations around the world are investing hugely in research and pinning hopes on significant research investments for rapid economic recovery. Our neighbor to the south of the border encourages young researchers to take risks, to expect and learn from failure. In Canada, we do not have sufficient population or resources to permit investment at such a scale, nor do we have the luxury of failure. We must invest wisely and continue to foster research through a combination of competition and collaboration, building networks and partnerships both across the country and globally. By creating opportunities for convergence among disciplines, for bringing together the diversity of our population, and for the meeting of minds across our vast geography, we stand the greatest chance of success. Canada is once again facing a shortage of skilled and highly skilled employees. There is a global race for talent, and every effort is required to keep our best minds in Canada. We believe the solution lies partially within our borders. We recently conducted a national survey of youth to learn how they view science and what influences and shapes their attitudes and perceptions. The good news is that 70% said that science can be relied on because it is based on facts, not opinion. Even better, 77% think science is a good field to pursue as a career. We need to be sure they can follow this stream. For the CFI, that means providing the spaces for learning hands-on research fundamentals and techniques, spaces where they'll be inspired and motivated to be like Donna Strickland or Mona Nemer or your chair, Kirsty Duncan. There is also a message for all of us here tonight. 57% of young adults believe it is critical for Canadian politicians and governments to rely on science when making policy decisions. I would like to recognize your leadership in supporting research, which offers us not only real solutions to global problems, but hope, which is perhaps the gift the world most needs to move from its post-pandemic state to new heights of achievement. Thank you for your kind attention, and I look forward to your questions.
For that presentation. We're going to move on to our next presenter, and then we'll open up for questioning. So I'd ask Dr. Nemer to please start.
Merci beaucoup.
Thank you very much, and good evening, Mr. Chair and members of the committee. Thank you for giving me the opportunity and the privilege to discuss with you this evening. I would like to start by congratulating you all for being nominated to this important committee. The creating of this committee is essential, not just for research, but for our country's future. Over the past 2 years, we have experienced a virus that has affected the entire planet and represents an existential threat that we've never seen for at least a century. We've been able to see science in action like never before. Science has guided us throughout the pandemic and has given us tools from diagnostics to vaccine and therapies to save lives, and that are allowing us to return to a more normal life. Researchers have raced to learn more about the virus and the disease it causes. Their discoveries informed public policies in real time and generated an unprecedented interest from the public in science. And they're also interested in evidence-informed decisions.
Capacity as Chief Science Advisor, I reached out to Canadian researchers who generously participated in many task forces and expert panels to help provide science advice to our government in support of pandemic management. This included advice on research needs, the role of aerosol in virus transmission, the impact of the disease on children, and options for ongoing virus monitoring and early detection. Science and research will be needed even more in the post-pandemic era to help us build healthy, safe, and sustainable societies while addressing the challenges of mitigating and adapting to climate change, which is why the work of this committee is so important. Since its inception in the fall of 2017, my office has been working toward fulfilling our mandate to provide advice to government on improving support for quality scientific research, including guidelines for an open science ecosystem, and secondly, enhancing the science advisory function within government, including processes for science-informed decisions. To these ends, we developed a model scientific integrity policy that has now been implemented by 22 federal departments and agencies, along with a roadmap for open science, which has also been embraced by the research community within and outside government departments. We have recommended and helped develop a growing network of departmental science advisors that further enhances the science advisory needs of government. And if I may, I wish to recognize the invaluable support of the chair, Madam Chrissy Duncan, in her role as Minister of Science in helping set up this most useful network. Additionally, my office participated in the creation of the Interdepartmental Indigenous STEM Cluster, or ISTEM, which works to increase and expand support for Indigenous priorities in environmental stewardship and research. We've been active in international scientific engagement, which greatly benefited our country during the pandemic. My
office will continue to provide scientific advice on issues that are critical to the welfare of Canadians, including emergency preparedness, climate change adaptation, advanced technology, and research and talent development in key sectors.
Of new scientific understanding, its mobilization in technology innovation, and its careful, appropriate, and transparent use in government decision-making contribute to the welfare and prosperity of all Canadians. Over the years, we have enjoyed some noteworthy successes in diverse areas, ranging from physics, computer sciences, and engineering to life sciences and health, which has translated into digital technologies and health products, among other innovations. But as many countries around the world increase their attention to and investments in research to drive their economies, Canada's relative spending on R&D has declined over the past 2 decades. A 2018 report of the Council of Canadian Academies outlines how Canada is lagging other countries in research on most enabling and strategic technologies, and accounts for a relatively small share of the world's research output for promising areas of technology development, notably biotechnology, nanotechnology, and material science. This, of course, has a direct impact on our ability to create innovative products and businesses that generate jobs and prosperity. Canada can still catch up to our peer countries who are forging ahead with big, bold visions for science and technology. We have the essential ingredients to do so with our talented people and our world-class facilities, but getting there means prioritizing science in our economic strategies.
The pandemic has already taught us many lessons. The importance of homegrown research, innovation, and manufacturing, and by creating the tools and products we need. It's also the power generated when government, business, academia, and civil society work collaboratively to advance science-based solutions. Most of our peer countries are prioritizing research and innovation for their post-pandemic economies. This is creating a highly competitive environment for attracting and retaining talent and investments.
A future that will need even more science and research. We must set ambitious targets for our country and ensure that we have the appropriate environment and conditions to meet them. A thriving research ecosystem is foundational for talent development and discovery. It also enables the development of mission-focused R&D in priority sectors for our country, whether they be health, agriculture, energy, or secure communications. In summary, reaffirming our research prominence will result in socioeconomic benefits for all Canadians. Science leadership will provide us the tools to strengthen our international standing in an increasingly complex world. We need to bring science and technology innovation to the mainstream of our economic policies, and we need to enshrine scientific advice in our decision-making process. I look forward to assisting the committee in its important work ahead. Thank you.
Thank you very much for both those presentations. We're going to move into the 6-minute round of questioning. First up, I'll recognize Mr. Williams.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Dr. Niemeyer and Dr. Rante, for being the first witnesses on the Standing Committee of Science and Research. Very exciting. You know, our future priority in Canada, our prosperity, is going to be, if we're ever going to move away from oil, gas, and mining, which is such a big driver of our GDP, it's going to be innovation. And it's going to be big, bold ideas and a sense of urgency that gets us there. But right now, we're ranked not near the top, but somewhere near the bottom. The Trudeau and the Paul Martin governments had wanted us to be in the top 5. So my question first to Dr. Runte, how are we going to get to number 5 in this nation?
Well, thank you very much. I think that we have to make a concerted effort and invest. We need to invest, first of all, in the young researchers so that we have the next generation and we have the workforce that will bring business and attract economic development. We need to invest in the cutting edge research for the future. We need to continually upgrade what we have and make sure that our past investments continue to pay off. We need to support the top institutions that have the possibility of moving great global issues, but we also need to provide the ability for institutions across the country, smaller research institutions in the regions, so that young people everywhere in the country can have the opportunity to do like Art McDonald, who was from Cape Breton, did get a Nobel Prize. So we have to provide an opportunity across the country while we're supporting the absolute cutting edge research in some institutions. And we have to maintain our what we have already while we're acquiring more.
Okay, thank you very much, Doctor. My favorite country for innovation is South Korea. South Korea fits into the Rock of Newfoundland and yet produces the same GDP as we do. Half of their GDP is innovation. So Samsung, LG, Hyundai, the US right now are in front of us. And what I'm getting to is I think we need to have innovation in innovation. So Dr. Niemer, the US, for instance, has come up with a new Earthshot initiative. They actually have clear targets where some of the most technological problems are solved. Right now, they're doing hydrogen economy, battery or long-term storage, and they're removing greenhouse gases from air. Yesterday, they announced a geothermal project. Should Canada develop not just a CARPA, but a US-style Earthshot initiative to get ahead of the pack so we can become better in innovation in this nation?
I think your observations are, of course, extremely important, and we need to look at these countries both in terms of what they invest in basic research, how they facilitate the translation of research into innovative products, and also the makeup of their economy, where they have many more companies that actually private sector that do research in those countries. When I last looked at South Korea, their investment in research is absolutely incredible, and is in a slope that keeps going up. But there's also the whole culture supportive culture, because you have the LG, you have the Samsung, and they can collaborate and help basic researchers in institutions and so on. So I think for us, we need to create this environment. And yes, we do need to have high ambitions. We need to decide that, we are going to have our own moonshot projects based on our needs, our capacities, our competitive advantage, and go after it in a determined and systematic way.
Thank you. And last question, Dr. Runte, should we be mirroring what, say, US or our competitors are doing for innovation, or should Canada be coming up with its own differentials, let's say food processing or some other technologies that we can be more competitive in?
Okay, well, that's a really great question. And I don't think that it's just simply looking at a technology that doesn't exist that we're going to fill a gap. I think we have to take where do we have talent? Where do we have already ability developed? What coincides with our culture and our ability? There's no point in us developing tropical some bananas or something. We have to look at what we have here in Canada. So what do we have? What are our talents? What are our strengths? And indeed, part of what we do in the Canada Foundation for Innovation is test that. We hold competitions and look at where do we have strength. So in 1990, before anybody knew the word for artificial intelligence, we were funding those researchers that created what we now have in artificial intelligence. When we invested in Perimeter Institute in Waterloo, there was nothing there. It was farmers' fields. And yet there were the people that had the ambition and the goal and the drive to do it. I wouldn't have picked Waterloo, perhaps. I mean, the mayor of Waterloo wouldn't like this, but I wouldn't have picked Waterloo as a site for that. But it was brilliant, and everything has grown around it. So we have to look at the people that we have, the need, and also the need, the global need, and then we will find our abilities in our niche, and we will be very competitive. We've shown we can do it. In precision medicine, we are very highly ranked in the world. Artificial intelligence, we've done quite well in quantum, but we've got a lot more to go. And we're looking at now what we do for clean technologies across the country. We can build in that area, but we need to take the grassroots and bring them up. And that will be our strength, because I truly believe that our strength and our best resource are the minds of the people across this country.
Thank you,
they
Dr.
will be the key.
Thank you, Dr. Renew. Moving on to Mr. Collins for 6 minutes.
Thanks, Mr. Chairman. And first and foremost, thank you to both the doctors for presenting tonight. It's a great inspirational kickoff to the first study. And thanks again to Member Cannings, who put this study in front of us to get us to where we are this evening. So terrific start to what we're doing. I want to start with Dr. Niemer's opening statement, and something caught me in her speech where she referenced science, and I wrote it down here, science and research will be needed even more in the post-pandemic era to help us build healthy, safe, and sustainable societies while addressing the challenges of mitigating and adapting to climate change. And that caught me because I think 90%, Dr. Niemer, through you, Mr. Chairman, 90% of Canadians agree with your statement. My question to you would be, how do we ensure that government policy continues to rely on science and is guided by science, whether it's related to health-related matters, which have dominated, obviously, our discussion over the last 2 years with the pandemic, or any other government programs in other ministries? How do we ensure that we, as a government, continue to rely on science, and science is front and center in the decision-making process, rather than what we've seen from a very small vocal minority of people who rely on social media? You know, you can surf Facebook, YouTube, any of those platforms, Twitter, and we found, certainly with people relying on, those who don't rely on science, we have found that they're questioning climate change, they're questioning the vaccine. You know, there's literally a flat Earth society out there now. And so my question to you would be, you know, how do we collectively, all levels of government, deal with that issue from an education perspective and from an investment and funding perspective to ensure that it remains a small minority?
Mr. Chair, this is such an important and of course complex and complicated issue. I think
take as much time as you need, Dr. Niemer.
Well, thank you very much. I think you're right on that this is a societal issue that has been taken on by our governments, by our scientists, by our media, for that matter. Mm-hmm. And this is something that we need to be doing for the collective good. I often say that science and science literacy are just so essential for democracy. Science is everywhere. people make decisions every day based on science without even realizing it.
Mm-hmm.
And when they don't understand the science, or when they're influenced by folks who have all sorts of ulterior motives, or not in a particular area, then I think we all suffer. So on the hopeful side, what we've seen during this pandemic is many of our scientists and researchers and physicians actually, stepped up and were engaging with the media, were engaging directly with the public. And I am just gratified by seeing how the public's appetite for science, for evidence is increasing, how the public is demanding to understand the evidence on which some decisions are being made. And I think that's, a very positive development, one that we need to continue to nurture. There are many ways that can be further helped. But I feel that we are on a good track for that. Of course, scientists, we ask them, and researchers, to do many things these days.
Mm-hmm.
We ask them to talk to the public. We ask them to do their research, to train, of course, the next generation, to start companies. And I think that all these are very important, but we need to recognize their efforts when they engage with the public. Dr. Rantes spoke about artificial intelligence and quantum sciences. And these are going to be transformative tools for us to tackle health, to tackle environmental adaptation. But we're going to need to have the public come along with us. So it's very important to engage with the public. And I'm proud to say that I have, taken on this as a priority for my office of bringing scientists and parliamentarians together. And we will be doing another edition of Science Meets Parliament. And I hope that all members of the committee will be part of this very important exercise.
Thank you, Doctor. And normally I don't comment on other countries' domestic policies, but ours seems to be a topic of interest of our neighbors. So I'm concerned about what we see in the U.S. in terms of government decisions at times not guided by science and, guided by other information. And so how do we deal with that post-pandemic? How do we deal with it from an education perspective? And I think Dr. Runtes, 57% of youth suggested that we continue to be guided by science was a little bit of a concerning number. I thought it would have been a lot higher unless I misheard that. But how does the government make investments to ensure that, the vast majority of Canadians continue to believe that policies at all levels of government should be guided by science? How do we implement that from a funding perspective and an education perspective? Thank you.
I'm sorry, Mr. Collins, we're just at the 6 minutes, and as much as the last one went a little longer, we're going to try to keep it to the schedule.
No problem.
So,
thanks, Mr. Chair.
No, much appreciated. Moving along to the next member, we'll have Mr. Vincent Jonquez.
Merci beaucoup, Monsieur le Président.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. It's a pleasure to have you here with us, dear witnesses. We're talking about science and research and success, the challenges, the opportunities. I'd first like to address my first questions to Mrs. Niemer. Can we put your role in perspective in Canada? We know that this position existed between 2004 and 2008, was abolished, and was restored in 2017. So there was a 10-year span where there was no chief science advisor. I'm trying to understand what you think the impact that would have been on government policy and also on the society at large, the fact that there was no chief science advisor in Canada. Mr. Chair, it is difficult for me to say what happened when I was not seated at the table, but I can tell you what's been happening since I took office. I can only imagine what we've missed. For example, during the pandemic, it was clear that my position was an important position. Through this role, I worked with various departments. We had a multidisciplinary science approach that affects more than one department, but there was also the connectivity within the country and beyond. This helped us so much. It leads us to believe that a chief science advisor is an important position. Most big countries have one, and this allows us to have a seat at the table and to benefit from the work of others so we can get their best practices, if you will. There is so much work to be done, and my deepest wish is to have a science advisory system that, like in the UK or the United States, they have systems that have been well established over the last 50 years.
You're on mute.
On n'entend pas Monsieur Blanchet.
We don't hear Mr. Blanchette.
Monsieur Blanchette-Jonca, vous êtes sur mute.
Mr. Blanchette-Jonca, you are on mute. He's not on mute, but maybe his microphone is off. I've solved the issue, Mr. Chair. I'm so sorry. My apologies to my colleagues and to the witnesses. Yay for technology. So, Mrs. Niemer, Quebec has enshrined the position of chief science advisor provincially. So I understand that there is no such equivalent in Canada. There's no protection for this position. You mentioned how important this position is to advise the government on different aspects of science and research. The fact that, do you think that your position should be enshrined in law? Would this not guarantee a voice for science and then a place for data in government decisions? Mr. Chair, this is a very interesting observation. Often, Quebec is at the forefront of such matters. I honestly envy my colleague with whom I was in touch throughout the pandemic. I do believe that it's in the country's interest to make such a position a perennial feature, to enshrine it in law. So it's up to parliamentarians to determine this. It's not up to me, of course, but I can tell you that it would be welcome news to many scientists and international bodies. Thank you, Mrs. Niemer. I'd like to talk about the pandemic. You mentioned it as well. I'd like to understand how Canada, a G7 country, is the only country that was unable to produce a vaccine. It does not have vaccine autonomy with regards to COVID-19. You know, producing a vaccine is not something you can do overnight. Vaccines were produced with consortia between universities and companies who had been working on this for a long time. So there's the development of a potential vaccine, and then there is also the production question. For Canada, it became clear that we did not have mass production capabilities. We have a restricted number of establishments that can produce such vaccines, and they're monopolized by the production of vaccines for the flu, for example. I think that the government has taken note of this situation, If you look at the investments that were made in vaccines and therapies, I think it will be important not to forget the trauma that we've experienced. So, we can't do up and down, have an up and down approach. We need to have stability with public health. Thank you, Mrs. Niemer.
Merci, Monsieur le Président.
Yes. Now moving on to Mr. Cannings.
Well, thank you, and thank you both for being here tonight. It is, I think, a historic occasion to have a committee on science and research in Canada, and it's wonderful to be here at the initial meeting and having two people such as yourselves here before us. I wish we had hours and hours to talk to you, but I'm going to. I met with Dr. Runte just a couple of weeks ago, so I'm going to start with Dr. Niemer. I have so many questions here. Both of you talked about the competition in terms of science and young scientists that Canada has with other countries, the amount of investment, the UK, the USA putting out an idea for $250 billion in science and research investment. When I talk to young scientists, especially in fields that require a large amount of expensive equipment, and this refers to Dr. Runte's field, they are drawn inexorably to the United States because there's just a very limited amount of that in Canada. So I'm just wondering, Dr. Niemer, you mentioned that Canada had to prioritize science in our economic strategies, and I kind of translated that as meaning we have to spend a lot more money. And I'm just wondering if you have any ballpark there. Is it, would 1/10 of what the U.S. is planning on spending, $25 billion, is that what we need to do, perhaps over a number of years? Or what would make the biggest impact to get Canada on the right track where the federal government is actually putting a good amount of money into science and research that will drive our economy forward in these years?
Well, Canada, Mr. President, is a member of the G7 country. We are a developed country. We are one of the greatest countries in the world, and I think that it would be expected and normal for Canada's investment in discovery, in innovation, to be above the average of similar countries, whether they are the G7 or the OECD. So I think that we do have a rough target there. And I think that we need to have a path towards that target. This being said, in terms of keeping the young researchers and scientists in Canada, I think we need to recognize that we have to create for them the diverse job opportunities. So they're not all going to go to universities. In fact, even the majority of PhDs don't end up being university professors. And what we need to have more of in the country are science-based industries and a science-based economy. Just because we are rich in natural resources doesn't mean we can do it. In fact, many of the latest technologies, whether AI, robotics, quantum, can have an amazing effect on our sectors, whether it's agriculture, natural resources, even mining. So it's a combination of both. And once we have these industries, these innovative industry, they themselves also will be investing in research and will help pull us up again.
Well, thank you. And you just mentioned a rough target with relation to the G7 or OECD. I assume that's in ratio to GDP. Do you have an idea what that rough target might be, where we are, where we should be?
I have looked recently. I'm sorry, I don't remember exactly where we are, but it's been mentioned that we are not in the position where we want to be. I'm more than happy to provide the committee with these exact numbers after that. I'm sorry, I don't want to be misquoted.
That's great. That would be great if you could provide us with those numbers. And just having the luxury of having you, Dr. Niemer, in front of us, I have to ask you, maybe this is an unfair question, but I just wondered if you could comment on the idea. I mean, you're the science advisor. There was also a proposal put forward for a parliamentary science officer that would give advice to parliamentarians such as ourselves, not just the cabinet and the government. What do you think of that concept? Do you think it's a valid concept? Would it be too unwieldy? I'm really interested to hear your opinion.
Well, you know, the more science advice we have, the better. There are a number of models out there. For example, in the UK, where there is an office of a parliamentary office for that provides science advice, and there is a government science advisor as well, and things work quite harmoniously. So I think that we can look at the models that exist out there and adapt what we feel is best for us. But science is going to be important everywhere, and certainly all decision making, and parliamentarians would most likely benefit from something like this.
Well, thank you. It looks like my time is up, so thanks very much.
Thank you, Mr. Cannings, for being right under the 6 minutes mark. Good job. Moving on to the 5-minute round, we're going to have Mr. Soroka.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. My first question will go to Dr. Niemer. I know we talk about the brain drain, and I have to admit my family is no different in this situation because I have 2 nephews that are actually going to university in the United States right now. They both started at the University of Alberta, but now one's getting his PhD and the other one's getting his master's in business. So is it really just only funding, or is it also the facilities that we have are lacking as well, or is it a combination of both?
I'm going to start by saying that it's not a bad thing for young people to go and study abroad or train abroad, or even work for a short period of time abroad. But we definitely want to have them back in Canada, and we want them contributing to the country. Like I said, there are opportunities already that exist in Canada, but we need and we must create more of them. And that can only happen by having different sectors work together, including government, private sector, and academia as well. Places like Silicon Valley or Boston that are thriving with a science-based economy, this is exactly what we saw happening, is these different sectors coming together and each doing what they need to be doing to put forward the best ecosystem possible.
Yeah, I like your comments, but unfortunately, they both have American girlfriends, and I don't see them really coming back too quickly, but that's another story. Dr. Runte, I guess my question is there areas that we're missing out on research, or there's areas that aren't getting funding because they don't fit some criteria, or is it pretty much an open field where there is no bounds? It's just lack of money to fund them.
Well, thank you very much. I think, first of all, you can ask your sons to be Canadian recruiters and bring their girlfriends to Canada. But I think that there are always areas that we are discovering, just like we're discovering new knowledge. And those areas of discovery quite often are between disciplines. And when we bring disciplines together, we get an exchange of different ideas and perspectives, and questions become more richly considered and developed, and the product actually of the research is better. when you try and build a model, for example, on the computer, simulating a problem, you can build a very simple model, and it will give simple answers. But the answers that you need are actually very complex, and you need not just to consider, for example, that a road would be built ergonomically, but it should be environmentally, it should be economically done, it should be done culturally supportive of the people's needs. And then you get a road that's really good. So when we bring researchers together, that happens. And one of the things that we are doing more and more in Canada is creating environments where there's not just the collision of atoms, but the collision of minds and people sharing ideas to make new discoveries. And that's really exciting. And it's happening right across the country. Just recently, I've heard about artificial intelligence mixing with agriculture, artificial intelligence mixing with medicine, neuroscience, oceanography mixing with nanoscience. There are all sorts of new possibilities that will come from this collaboration and bringing together of new ideas and people.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Runte. And I know I'm short on time, but a quick question. Is there something that is very much cutting edge that we're completely missing the boat on here in Canada that other countries are picking up on, that we could maybe dive more research into?
Quick 30 seconds.
Absolutely, there are things that we're missing out on, but there are also, if we told everybody right now, other countries would jump on it too sweet. I think that I could provide you a long list of things that I think we need to develop, but I also believe that we will develop them if we give the opportunity to the researchers, if we provide the basic tools to labs and equipment and to researchers, universities and hospitals, that people will come together and find those things. In every one of our granting competitions, we ask people the question, how will your work help Canada and Canadians? What will this do for the country? And we think that's important.
Thank you, Dr. Runte. Moving on, we have Madam Diab for 5 minutes.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. And it's really wonderful to be here with both doctors in this historic standing this committee in our first meeting. I want to talk a little bit about something that struck a chord in me, Dr. Nimmer, when I read or when I heard you say that the power generated when government, business, academia, and I guess private enterprise, I think you said civil society, work collaboratively to advance science-based solutions. And then when I heard Dr. Runte say Art McDonald, Nobel Prize, Cape Breton, of course, I come from Nova Scotia, the small province in Atlantic Canada. And you know, it goes to show you, it doesn't really matter where we are in Canada or research happens everywhere, but it's also the power of collaboration. And having spent 8 years in provincial politics before coming to federal, I see the real advantage of collaborating, not just between the levels of government, but quite frankly with academia, our universities, colleges, and our students, whether it's international students or our own homegrown sons and daughters. I have two that are scientists. But also the private enterprise. So my question to you, Dr. Nimmer, is what can we do more to enrich this culture of collaboration that I think is desperately needed in order for us to be able to really gain a lot more momentum in this country for research and science?
I so strongly believe, in collaboration. I think it has to be our mantra, so to speak. Now, depending on who you want to be collaborating with whom, of course, the incentives and the facilitations are very different. but governments have huge tools to facilitate collaborations with specific sectors between academia and businesses, supporting as well civil societies and communities who want to do research and who want to collaborate as well, based on their local needs and local capacities as well, and growing those capacities. So it's difficult to provide specific tools, except to say that governments have a number of things. If they wanted to have more businesses develop certain products, they're great buyers. There are procurement things that can be done. Of course, taxation, regulations. It's there are infinite possibilities. Governments are facilitators, and I think the expectations of the citizens of this country is that all levels of governments work together and also work with the communities and with the researchers themselves. And in this pandemic, we saw how the researchers were willing to step up and be very generous with their advice, with their time. Many of them pivoted to doing research into areas that are needed by our country for the pandemic. So I'm very hopeful on those fronts.
Thank you. And I am not aware, but I will ask either one of you. We have First Ministers conferences in almost everything or many topics in government. Are you aware of a ministers' conferences on research that happens between the federal and provincial, or are there opportunities for either one of you to be involved in things like that in terms of sort of assisting the federal government to proceed with that? Or even in your role, do you assist academia at all on behalf of government?
Maybe I can start, and I'll just say that I see very much my role as a conduit and a convener between academia and the government. To the question of First Minister's Conference on Science and Research, it was one of the recommendations of the Fundamental Science Review. I'm not aware, but I have to say that before being in this role, I didn't really follow what the politics really. But beyond just having a First Minister's Conference on Science.
I think we might have a technical problem there, but that's right. We're out of time on that round, Dr. Niemer.
Ought to be integral part of these conversations.
Thank you, Dr. Niemer. No, that's right. Happens to the best of us, having technology issues from time to time. We are now going to move into the 2.5-minute round of questioning. First up is Mr. Blanchette.
Here we are. Thank you, Mr. Chair. My question is for Mrs. Niemer. I assessed the description of your mandate, and it is to recommend ways in which we can improve scientific advisory within the federal government. It's also in the Naylor report. There was a recommendation that was based on the creation of a Research and Innovation Advisory Committee. So there was a recruitment process that was put into place, and then we haven't heard anything back from the government since 2019. Do you know where the creation of that committee is? No. In your latest report that was published in February 2020 on open science, you recommended that Canada have an open science approach and research funded by the federal government. Can you tell us what progress has been made following the publication of your report? Yes, Mr. Chair, it's a pleasure for me to answer this question. The interpreter would like to mention that the sound is cutting out. The information was published online yesterday. The results of the consultations that we conducted among scientists, researchers, and also funders of research in Canada and abroad. So we are making good progress on our roadmap. Within the federal government, we have asked that various departments have an action plan. They all have an action plan and have had them for the last 6 months. Some of them have even posted their action plans. And now we need to develop a national approach, whether it be within or outside of government. We need to find the best way to tackle this while streamlining with international groups. Most funding comes from multiple sources. The interpreter would like to alert you to the fact that the sound is cutting out. There is a lot of support for open science in Canada, especially among researchers.
Mr. Niemer, moving on to Mr. Cannings.
Well, thanks, and I will stay with Dr. Niemer for this quick round. And you mentioned in your opening remarks that one of your priorities was to create and or cultivate an open science ecosystem. I just wondered if you could expand on that and let the committee know what an open science ecosystem is.
An open science, of course, involves a number of things. It's open publications, it's open access to data, it's the ability to openly engage with the public. So there are different dimensions, and towards these objectives, my office recommended the adoption of a science integrity policy, which was done by all major science-based departments and agencies. And therein there is the commitment to open science and to open data. So the first phase was to do the open science, the open publishing, if you want, because that's the easier part, and then move on to the to having the majority of the data that is within the federal government, whether it's observational data, research data, of course, with exceptions that we have also provided guidelines on to be open as well.
I'll have a quick question for Dr. Runte, and that is just if you can, in very short order, explain how your role at CFI differs from the other three granting councils of the federal government.
The three granting councils are part of the government, and we are at arm's length from the government. We fund the research infrastructure. They fund the people. We provide the infrastructure to institutions, because when you purchase a piece of infrastructure or you build something, somebody has an individual researcher can't do that. It has to be done by an institution. Also, we provide only 40-cent dollars, whereas the councils provide more. So if we provide 40-cent dollars, it means that the provinces have to come in and get persuaded to put in the 60% or another 40% and 20% from perhaps private enterprise or institutions.
Thank you so much.
We're hundreds of researchers doing that. Institutions have to take on that.
Thank you so kindly. I'm going to move on to Mr. Boldenelli.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you to our witnesses for being here today. It's a pleasure to have you as our first witnesses on our new committee. First, I want to begin with Dr. Niemer and follow up on a conversation that my block colleague had put forward with regards to the National Advisory Council on Research and Innovation. and it was one of the recommendations of the Naylor report, and it has yet to be followed up on by the government. And as you mentioned, I mean, you talked about the ecosystem foundation is critical to science and research and innovation moving forward. And do you believe not having that Research and Innovation Advisory Council, is that key to help developing that ecosystem?
Well, different countries, of course, have different variations of these science and technology councils or other declinations. They're helpful in providing strategic advice to government in terms of either areas that need further attention or specific activities, and usually they have people from the private sector as well as from academia and government. So they're generally viewed as very helpful. During the pandemic, of course, I have put together an expert committee to advise us on the important areas for science and actions for the pandemic. You could do it per sector, or you can have one that looks at the broad ecosystem for the country.
Just to follow up, in the mandate letter for the Minister of Innovation, Science and Industry that was published in December, it indicated that he worked with the Minister of Health to develop a plan to modernize the federal research funding ecosystem to maximize the impact of investments in both research excellence and downstream innovation, with a particular focus on the relationship among the federal research granting agencies and the Canada Foundation for Innovation. Seems very similar to what one of the recommendations, I think it's 4.10, in the Naylor report talks about. So are we tending to say that the system in place right now is too bureaucratic? Is it too cumbersome for those stakeholders that we're dealing with in their relationship with the government to undertake those research and those scientific projects that we ultimately need?
We have a system that has served us well over the years, but again, it's not perfect, and it needs to keep up with the way that science is developing, and also the needs of the country in terms of translating discoveries or focusing into specific areas. So I think every business, every now and then, look at how they're doing business, and sometimes they find out that they're doing great, and other times they tweak what they're doing, other times they remove certain activities, other times they add some. So my understanding would be that such a self-evaluation is not a bad thing.
Thank you, Doctor. I think that's my time.
Yes. Thank you kindly for the presentations and the answers that you have provided. We will suspend the meeting for 2 minutes to do sound checks on the next panel. back, everybody. We will hear first from Dr. Pomeroy.
Okay, great. Thank you so much. It's a great pleasure to be speaking to this committee. It's a great pleasure that there is such a committee for Canada. And it's absolutely marvelous to the focus on science and research. I'll introduce myself briefly. I completed my graduate and undergraduate training in water sciences at the University of Saskatchewan in Saskatoon, and then worked for NATO, the US, and Canadian governments as research scientist, and then at the University of Wales in Aberystwyth in the United Kingdom. I was attracted back to Canada in 2003 by a renewed science and research strategy that led to the Canada Research Chairs Program and a substantial increase in Tri-Council funding for academics. This made Canada a warm, welcoming place where one could more confidently pursue large-scale, world-class research. Since that time, I've led or co-led 5 national research networks and some international initiatives, and I conduct research on water, particularly the impacts of climate change on water resources of cold regions such as Canada, where snow and ice are vulnerable to the warming temperatures. And coming from the Saskatchewan and the Prairie provinces, where drought is always on the horizon, and we even have dust storms in the prairies occurring this week. It's a massive issue for the West, and how we manage and predict that water, how we steward that water, how we understand it, and how we make sure that it's available there for our ecosystems, for our communities, for our Indigenous communities, for food production, industry, energy, are very, very important issues for us. Over the years, I've observed Canada build up a really enviable system of supporting and encouraging university-based science and research. The dependence on university researchers for science production in Canada has grown. I started off as a government scientist, and I wouldn't want to be one right now as budgets have declined over the decades. But it's better at the universities. However, there's a risk to this dependence on the universities as it's structured right now. We lack the long-term means to sustain our national prominence in research areas, and other countries have these mechanisms in place. Here's what I mean. In the UK, there are these NERC centers that combine academic and government research on strategic topics over long periods of time, decades of time. In the United States, there are cooperative institutes between the federal government and universities that again function over decades and sustain long-term research objectives. In Canada, we don't have this, and my colleagues and I have worked on issues of water and climate and water pollution since the early 1990s. It's been made even more pressing by climate change. And we found that we've had to establish 6 different research networks across the country to do this with 5 different research funding agencies. We call ourselves acronym surfers because every 5 years or so, we have to reinvent ourselves a bit. We have to learn a new funding agency. We have to bring in new sources of support for this. And it's precarious. It's also inefficient and takes long periods of time. And it's a great worry. We know that water is life. We know that Canada depends on water. And if we can go back to John Palliser's expedition in the 1850s, where this first came to prominence as a government report. So this is something that should be straightforward moving forward. Right now, the network I lead is called Global Water Futures. It's funded by the Canada First Research Excellence Fund, which is a marvelous amount of funding for science research. It's based at the University of Saskatchewan in partnership with Waterloo, Laurier, McMaster Universities, funds over 200 professors at 18 universities, and we've hired 1,100 students and researchers to transform Canada by finding ways to better forecast, prepare for, and manage our future water in the face of dramatically increasing risks. Global Water Futures is positioning Canada as a global leader for water science, and we work throughout the world. However, after a 7-year run, Global Water Futures will end like any CFRF network next year, and there are no renewals. So there are no similar large science funding programs that could sustain our refreshed global leadership in water science in Canada. This is a precarious position indeed. I propose a solution to acronym surfing and research instability like this, not more big chairs to bring in people from outside of Canada to do things at the end of their careers, but sustained collaboration between the federal government and universities through development of our own cooperative institutes between consortia of research universities, federal government departments, provinces, industry, communities, First Nations, and other partners. These cooperative institutes would sustain a long-term focus on issues of long-term national importance and bring to bear our national scientific resources, our laboratories on these issues to sustain big science and global preeminence in strategic areas of particular benefit to Canada. In the area of water, perhaps the upcoming Canada Water Agency could be a federal facilitator and leader for this, along with the natural science departments, tri-council agencies, CFI, and others. A Canadian Cooperative Institute in Water Sustainability with the universities. I'm sure there are many other worthy topics of this long-term strategic support and collaboration between federal science departments and universities across this country. And we could stop acronym surfing and get down to answering the really dangerous questions that we have right now, the scary ones. How do we predict and prevent floods, droughts, poisoning of our Great Lakes, decline of our fisheries, safe drinking water for our Indigenous communities, and other problems. So anyway, I wrap up there and look forward to taking questions from you. And thank you for having me here.
Thank you kindly. Now moving on to Dr. Patry.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Permettez-moi d'abord.
First, let me tell you how happy I am to have been invited to speak with you today. We will be talking about the importance of science and research. I am here as the CEO of U15, an organization of many Canadian leading research universities. Members of U15 are responsible for 78% of research in Canada, 81% of the patents, and 70% of PhDs.
World innovation-driven ecosystems are anchored by world-class research-intensive universities that are training tomorrow's leaders and innovators. Innovation is about people. Innovation is about making the world better. Innovation builds on basic, curiosity-driven research to make things better for the benefit of society. Vous savez, cette pandémie.
You know, this pandemic has shown us the power of research, the necessity of persevering, and the importance of innovation. For many years, mRNA messenger technology, which is at the basis of the vaccines, was going nowhere.
Of RNA through the cells, an almost insurmountable challenge until a Canadian company from the University of British Columbia developed a lipid coating which forms a protective envelope around the RNA when it enters a cell. A Canadian university-based innovation resulting from years of fundamental research that is now used in one of the mRNA vaccines. You know, as we begin to emerge from the pandemic, Canada faces increasing competition for the talent needed to drive high-growth, knowledge-intensive industries, address global challenges, and build an equitable, inclusive society. Canada has many advantages in this competition, including a welcoming society, an open immigration system, vibrant cities, proximity to the US, and strong world-class research universities. You know, industry leaders will tell you that the crucial building block for success is having access to highly qualified people with advanced degrees because they are tomorrow's generators of new knowledge and the drivers of innovation in companies and social enterprises across the country. Toutefois, il faut dire que le...
However, we have to say that Canada ranks 28th in the OECD when it comes to the share of master's and doctoral degrees.
When you invest in research, you invest in people, you invest in young people. And research investments made by successive governments over the past 20 years have certainly contributed to our quality of life. However, we need to be a lot more ambitious. Countries around the world are making massive investments in research and talent development at a scale never seen before. Canada will need to invest strategically in research, innovation, and skills development to ensure we contribute to be economically competitive, able to equip Canadians for the jobs of the future, and remain a destination of choice for highly talented people from around the world. In addition to the investments that are being considered right now, that is the expansion of the CRC, the biomanufacturing investment, CARPA, commercialization investments, et cetera, we need to make an important investment in the granting councils. When we look at inflation-adjusted research investments per PhD over the last 20 years, it is very easy to demonstrate that Canada has a serious research funding deficit when compared to the period between 2002 and 2008. And now is the time to address this gap, to place Canada as a strong leader in science and technology and social science research. In making these investments in research and innovation, governments need to consider two things. Number one, the need to be globally competitive. If we are to retain and attract the best minds in the world, it is important that our programs be globally competitive. Some of us have lived through the brain drain of the 1990s, and while we're not there yet, as we come out of the pandemic, the investments made by the countries around the world are threatening our ability to attract and retain exceptional researchers. The second thing is to remember that research, as I said, is about people. Research is about investing in the leaders and innovators of tomorrow in order to improve the lives of Canadians. It's also important to remember that close to 80% of the research funding goes directly to support students and postdocs. Allow me to conclude by citing a paragraph from the 2014 Government of Canada Budget Plan, 2014. To be successful in this highly competitive global economy, Canada needs to continue to educate, retain, and attract the best minds in the world, to provide them with the space and facilities for innovation and creativity, to offer them the resources necessary to place Canada as a strong leader in science, technology, and social science research. Thank you very much, and I'll be delighted to answer your questions.
Dr. Patry. Now for our final presenter tonight, Dr. Goel. For 6 minutes. Or 5 minutes, sorry, 5 minutes.
Great. It's wonderful to see this House of Commons committee being established, and congratulations to all of you on your appointments. Thanks for the opportunity to appear this evening. I'm a public health physician researcher, and prior to my current appointment, I spent a year directly working on the pandemic research response. So I was one of those people that pivoted not just my research, but actually my administrative career. We only have to look at that response to see the return on investment in science and research. And Dr. Patry just highlighted one very important example. Scientists, researchers, and public health experts have played critical roles in advising and leading the response, from sitting on advisory committees to pivoting their research to COVID-related studies. It's the support for fundamental research for over many years that provided the foundation for that expertise to be there when we needed it. And we certainly think a lot about the contributions of science to the response, such as the development of vaccines and treatments. But there's so many other areas. For example, social scientists have played a role in addressing vaccine hesitancy, economists in assessing the impact of pandemic measures, or the role played by medical geographers and historians in understanding past pandemics, such as this committee's chair has done. Canada's support for science and research has yielded some very crucial competitive advantages, notably in quantum and AI. But as you have heard, we are at risk of falling behind other countries. Stable research funding is essential, but we also need stable programs. As Dr. Pomeroy has noted, new programs are constantly created with new acronym soups. These programs are often designed with a legitimate desire for impacting on pressing issues or contributing to the economy. But the design of the programs often misses the importance of fundamental research. We often focus on narrow research areas and we push specific types of partnerships. The reality is impact is achieved through broad interdisciplinary work, through partnerships and collaboration, and through knowledge mobilization. And that knowledge mobilization happens most significantly through the talent that we produce, the master's and PhD graduates that take their research experiences out into society. Our research also impacts on policies and practices, and we have an impact through commercialization. But we all too often jump straight to commercialization as the sole means of impact. It's also important to recognize that for the commercialization to be successful, we need receptors. And as been noted, our business investment in research and development is very low. And without that kind of capacity on the business side, we won't be able to get the innovations. So in the Waterloo region, we have developed examples of how this can work. My university is a leader in areas such as quantum, cybersecurity, nanotechnology, and robotics. And this has benefited from many decades of investment by governments. But we are also working to apply many of these technologies and digital strengths with entrepreneurs to new innovations. The region has built an ecosystem which is fostering the further development and application of such technologies. We can apply these technologies to our biggest challenges, such as climate change, or the aging population, or preparing for future pandemics. Waterloo is one of the fastest growing regions in the country, largely because of the innovation ecosystem that is underpinned by world-class research. We are well positioned to continue to help drive our economic renewal and growth. As we look to move forward past the pandemic, building a country of innovative, equitable, and resilient communities with an eye to environmental sustainability, health and wellness, and technologically advanced societies, universities and our research have a central role to play. We look forward to working with the committee to advance these goals. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Goel. For now, we're on the 6-minute round of questioning, and we'll have MP Williams.
Thank you very much, everyone, for joining us tonight. Mr. Pomeroy, I'm going to start with you, sir.
Yes.
I come from a rural region of Canada. Saskatchewan is very rural, as is Canada. And Canada, of all the 4,000 municipalities, 3,790 are rural. The rest, 94 only, are urban. Can you tell me a little bit of what you've seen and what you're studying? How important is rural innovation, so commercialization and research in rural Canada, including Indigenous areas, as you mentioned, compared to just our urban centers?
It's absolutely crucial for the survival and prospering of rural regions. My focus has been water, so we look at irrigation or drinking water supplies or groundwater, but also agricultural practices that can better manage water and ways to harvest water in unique methods. But the communities benefit substantially from this when they have a better means to their economy, when their ecosystems can remain intact. So many people in rural Canada, from Indigenous to others, will have a lifestyle that involves hunting and fishing as well as and appreciation of nature, and so that's also critically important for these areas. And it's something that gets forgotten sometimes. We see it now with the pandemic, the exodus of people from the cities to our rural regions, and we want to make sure that these are welcoming places, that these are sustainable communities that can help build the rest of the century in the country. It's not everything will be occurring in the large cities. And the innovation of rural residents is something well known in Saskatchewan. The best graduate student in the world I've always thought was a Saskatchewan farm child who knew how to fix things on the farm and could do the same in the Arctic or in a laboratory or elsewhere. So there's a wealth of capacity that comes from rural Canada that will be crucial for our science moving forward.
Thank you very much, sir. Dr. Patry, we talk about IP, and it's great to hear that of the U15, about almost 80% of research and patents come from that group. Canada in 2019 developed $39 billion worth of IP, but the US did 6.6 trillion, so 169 times ours. How do we begin to catch up with IP development with the US?
I'm going to get this right. Sorry. This is one of the big challenges. If one of the things we like to do is to analyze the patterns that are happening in business right now, and we have to admit that over the last 20 years, business expenditures in R&D, where most of the intellectual property is generated, have been decreasing at an alarming rate. While the rest of the world has been increasing, their investments in R&D in terms of business investment in R&D, in Canada, that has fallen. We're now at 1.54% of GDP, which explains some of the statistics that you've just highlighted. I think one of the things is to try, and we've had many studies that have looked at this in the past, and I think there needs to be a little bit more action in terms of and this is a personal view, it's not the U15 view, but on the SR&ED credits, we have we do a lot of SR&ED credits in terms of assistance, providing credits, whereas many other countries like Germany do direct investments in industry and assist them through direct programs in assisting industry be more competitive globally. It is, and I know every government has looked at that, but there's been very little movement on the SR&ED credit program in recent years. And I'm sure my other colleagues might have some other ideas on this also, Mr. Williams.
Thank you, and I know it's very complimentary. I wish I had 10 minutes with you all. Dr. Goel, we've had issues in Canada for a long time about brain drain. So a lot of graduates, even from the University of Waterloo, that get picked up by the US. How do we stop brain drain? How do we draw more talent, and how do we have more retention of our talent in Canada?
Well, certainly on the science and research side, building on Dr. Patry's point, is that we need more investment by the private sector to hire those people. The reason those people go is because they can get jobs in other countries in the disciplines that they've been trained in. In recent years, we have had shifting, and certainly from Waterloo, in recent years, more of the graduates are staying in Canada. But in part, that's because the multinationals have figured out that they can set up here and hire the graduates and not have to pay for them to move. So that is an important step, because it helps to build the ecosystem, because having those jobs for people when they graduate, they'll get experience in a multinational, then they might go to work for a Canadian firm or start their own firm, and they haven't moved to Silicon Valley or some other part of the world. But the starting point is going to be that we have to create more opportunities for those Canadian graduates to stay in Canada.
Thank you.
Thank you. Moving on, I will have MP Bradford for 6 minutes.
Well, thank you very much, Dr. Pomeroy, Dr. Patry, and Dr. Goel, for being generous with your time this evening and offering your expert opinions from your various perspectives. So I'll direct this first question, I believe, to Dr. Goel, because you've already partly alluded to it in your previous address. Many countries, including Canada, have recently announced strategies and significant investments in emerging technologies, such as artificial intelligence, quantum, and genomics. What can we do to ensure that we empower institutions leading in this research so that they compete in these emerging areas? Like I say, you alluded to it before, but maybe you could expand on what else we can do. Obviously, funding is critical, but there's probably other things as well.
Yeah, so critically, the stability of the funding, and Dr. Pomeroy referred to this, that we have different cycles of programs that lead to people having to constantly reinvent themselves. So as we develop strategies such as the Pan-Canadian AI strategy, the new quantum strategy, with genomics, we have Genome Canada, we need to ensure that the things that we invest in have stable, continuous funding. We also, and this was hinted at, I think, in the previous witnesses, is we do need to look at the coordination between programs. While there's great opportunities with having separate funding sources for people, chairs programs, the operating grants program, the infrastructure programs through CFI, and then the research support fund, which supports the infrastructure that enables research, it can also be very challenging for researchers because they have to line up all the different funding, which often have competitions at different points in time, have different windows of what is eligible. Whereas in other countries, there's program funding that enables researchers to get everything they need almost through a one-stop type of process. And so that's where we need to really think about how we can coordinate all these disparate funding sources in a better way, and then focus them on a few of these areas where Canada has the chance to truly lead. And as you mentioned, AI, quantum, nanotechnology are some of those areas.
Thank you. So building on that, I'd like to hear from each of you on this. What do you feel that some of the biggest challenges and opportunities are in regards to working with the government's granting councils? So I don't know, maybe we want to start in the same order that you presented before. Dr. Pomeroy, would you like to start?
Yes, thank you. Many of the problems that we face in Canada are interdisciplinary. They go further than the natural sciences and engineering or medicine or social sciences and humanities alone. And they require an interdisciplinary or maybe a transdisciplinary approach, moving outside of universities into the private sector and public sector and communities. That's very hard when we have separate agencies with separate funding streams and that they wish to support. We have a few things such as the Canada Foundation, the Canada First Research Excellence Fund, which is interdisciplinary, but probably not enough. And more of that would be very helpful. The other is the long-term support that is necessary to build these research programs and to keep our capacity in Canada. Remember, when these research networks stop for a year, we lose all of our postdocs, our graduate students, and elsewhere. Where do they go? Probably not in Canada. That's when we leak them overseas. And so we need to keep that steady momentum together for these groups to keep people here in Canada, and so that undergraduates know their trajectory, what it might be in this country because of that longer term prospect.
Let me just, so as not to repeat what Dr. Goel and Dr. Pomeroy have just indicated, I think one of the elements one of the things that I'd like to say is that research is a contact sport. Research is the interactions of researchers, of students, of the business sector coming together, again, with government researchers. I think one of the things that we have been advocating is to ensure that government researchers are able to work seamlessly with researchers in our universities and also in industry. And that's one way of accelerating our discovery processes. I think it's very important to just to reiterate what was mentioned, to ensure that programs have stability. And this is probably what was being referred to when we were looking at examining the coordination between agencies to ensure that number one, agencies work together. I used to be the president of the Canada Foundation for Innovation, funding the research infrastructure in universities and research hospitals and colleges. And I think it's time for the 3 granting councils and CFI and Genome Canada, I would add, to essentially work in a more coordinated fashion going forward.
Thank you very much. That's the end of that section. We're going to move on to MP Blanchette.
Merci beaucoup, Monsieur le Président.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. First, I'd like to greet the witnesses that are here with us this evening. My question will be for Mr. Patry. First, I'd like to thank you for your work in the Canada Research University group. I know you'll be leaving this position soon, so I want to congratulate you for the work you've done so far. It's a pleasure to have you here with us tonight. I perused the recommendations that you made as part of your pre-budget memoir, and I was struck by recommendation number 2 on Canadian investments in R&D. I'd like to say, Canada is lagging behind. Its investments proportional to the GDP compared to the United States and other OECD and G7 countries is inferior. What are the repercussions on the field in universities when Canada doesn't spend on R&D? I would say it's businesses that are not investing enough in R&D internally. Many studies were made on this topic, one on the Canadian Council of Academics. They found that businesses have been innovative to the point that they needed to be. So when there are support programs, it's better to take funding that is offered rather than becoming very competitive and investing in R&D. This was in the early aughts and early 2010s. Now what we need to do is revitalize the industrial sector. What I was referring to earlier was the research, the SR&ED credits. I don't know what it's called in French. And we should adjust it slightly. Some people have suggested that it should be changed to provide one-off funding to some businesses in certain sectors. I always say that there are 3 important elements to activate research, industrial research. 1, you need to invest in areas where there is expertise in Canada. You have to build on the expertise we already have. That's 1. 2, we have to make sure that these are significant markets, if it's $1 billion or so on and so forth. 3rd, we want to make sure that Canada can take advantage of these investments. For example, if it's a product that is manufactured, it should be manufactured in Canada. That way we can create jobs in Canada. So we would develop new knowledge and then have it developed, have it manufactured elsewhere makes no sense. So these 3 elements have served other countries well, like Germany, like England, and they have set good examples. Another thing we should consider is to encourage these partnerships between industry and universities. Fostering these partnerships is important because as a researcher, I also study wastewater specifically. And what we need to do is make sure that what we're developing is useful to society. Building these industry-university partnerships is critical. Thank you very much. You also mentioned in the report that there is a race to scientific findings worldwide. So Canada wants to be competitive nationally and internationally. We're the only G7 country that has lost researchers. How do you explain this? Is it because funding is inadequate and too spotty? Like I said earlier in my opening comments, I've analyzed this on many occasions. I'm happy to share my findings with the committee. It's easy to see what's happened. It's easy to see what's happened in the last 20 years. There are two important elements. One, inflation costs. They're quite significant. And this year, with inflation to 3.5 or 4% next year, things are getting dramatic. But the second thing is the pressure on the system. The pressure comes from inflation, yes, but also from growth. Thankfully, there has been growth with PhDs, not enough to be competitive. I said it earlier. We rank 28th in the OECD countries for people who have master's degrees and PhDs. So this growth, with it's also 3% per year, has made it so that good years for research were between 2002 and 2008. At that time, after introducing CFI funding, Genome Canada, etc., we had a lot of potential. We've moved backwards since then. Today, we're at the same level or even lower than we were in the year 2000. So there are important investments that are needed for fundamental research, the CFI and Genome Canada.
Now moving on to MP Canning.
Well, thanks again for all of you being here. It's a real honor to have you. I must admit, I don't think I've seen so many Order of Canada pins before a committee in one single meeting. So this is it's truly an honor. I'm going to start with Dr. Patry again, and thanks for mentioning my friend Peter Cullis and his work on the lipid coating and mRNA. I really appreciate that. It shows what Canada can do with, you mentioned how important fundamental research is, but you also touched on the support for grad students, for master's and PhD students. Many, many years ago, almost 50 years ago, I guess, I received an NSERC scholarship that allowed me to go to a university and study biology. So I appreciate that. But in talking to my colleagues now in the biology field, they point out that that funding from NSERC and perhaps the other councils hasn't gone up in many, many, many years, that those rates have been stagnant, and it's not surprising that young people are perhaps looking elsewhere. And I just wondered if you would comment on that aspect. You touched on it, just to mention it again.
Thank you very much for the question, because it's something that we did put in our brief that Monsieur Blanchet-Jonca made reference to, because you can invest in research in two different ways, well, in many ways, but one is providing funding to the granting councils, which is obviously the one of the great ways. The second way of investing is investing directly in students through scholarships, graduate scholarship, what we call the CGS, the Canada Graduate Scholarship Program. And you're absolutely right. The number and the value of these scholarships has been stagnant for at least 15 years. And we've been advocating for a tripling of the number of graduate students scholarships, so that, and this will achieve two things. We're talking about diversity. We're talking about equity, diversity, and inclusion a lot. But by investing in graduate students, we can target these graduate scholarships to students in designated groups, number one, but also in disciplines, if you want to go that far. So we've certainly advocated for a significant increase in the number and the value. When and I'm sure your analysts can provide you with the numbers, but when you look at the investments that are being contemplated in the US right now, it is scary. We've already seen, and I've made reference to it in my remarks, we've already seen a little bit of an exodus right now. And if all university presidents can point to one or two individuals that have now been lured into the US, to Germany, to the UK, to Japan, because of the significant investments that are made in the post-pandemic era, or at least what we think will be the post-pandemic era, we hope. And I think, you know, we're at the edge of having a 1990 type of situation. We're not there yet, as I said, but we have to be a lot more aggressive. We have to support investments in graduate students and in the granting councils directly.
Well, thank you. And I'd just like to quickly move to Dr. Pomeroy, who, Dr. Pomeroy, you made quite an interesting statement there. You said you wouldn't want to be a government scientist right now. I'm just wondering if you could perhaps expand on that and explain why that might not be a good place to be.
Yes, well, government scientists that I have had the pleasure of working with have seen their budgets drop over the decades. Their numbers have dropped over the decades. Investments in federal laboratories have not continued apace, and they have become isolated. There used to be many programs where government scientists led national research enterprises, networks, and engaged deeply with them. We had funding agencies and approaches that promoted this very strongly. That seems to have declined to some degree. Where we've sustained it and kept it strong has been with co-location of government labs on campuses. We have the National Hydrology Research Centre of Environment Canada on the campus of the University of Saskatchewan, and working together that builds that strength in water research that is so crucially important. But of course, government scientists also generally cannot apply for tri-council funding, which is different from what they would be in the UK, for instance, or elsewhere. And so they miss out as being investigators on large programs such as the Canada First Research Excellence Fund or NSERC networks, unless they find ways to bring their own cash. And often that cash is simply not there. So it makes it very challenging for them, and that's difficult for our students, because some of our graduate students would be superb government scientists, would love to have a career as a government scientist, and those jobs are very few and far between.
Water scientists, can you comment on the history of the Experimental Lakes project? We heard about it in the House today, I think, and just as maybe a cautionary tale.
Yes, this particular facility is developed in the 60s and 70s as simply the best in the world to study the problem of acid rain, but also then became over time a more valuable facility to study the impacts of climate change and land use development and others. It was a federal laboratory for many years, dropped, as were many other. So there are dozens of research basins like this across Canada where federal research in water was conducted that were given up by the federal government. The universities or other groups are trying to operate them. IISD in Winnipeg trying to keep Experimental Lakes area going, but many others by the University of Saskatchewan, Waterloo, McMaster, if you name it. We've all got our former federal research site that we're trying to keep going. And so that's been part of the issue. Because these outdoor laboratories like Experimental Lakes are invaluable for environmental research and water research. And if we don't keep them going, then we lose a legacy that cannot be repeated. And particularly when we have rapid climate change, we have to know how these ecosystems operated before that climate change and how they've changed during it as our early warning systems. And it's quite precarious to do it now. And I'm a big fan of the Canada Foundation for Innovation, and we have put many proposals together. I finished one just 2 hours ago to support places like this.
Thank you kindly. Now moving on to our last round. It'll be two questioners at 5 minutes apiece. First up is MP Soroka.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Dr. Joel, I have a question here. You had mentioned about research being narrow focused. I'm just curious about that comment because I guess if someone has got, one fantastic idea to do research on, is the problem why it's narrow focused is because of the bureaucracy that's involved either from government or different organizations out there of trying to get funding, but the streams are so difficult to navigate that they just continue to keep doing the same kind of projects. So is it bureaucracy really the problem with funding as well, besides lack of money and facilities?
It's really a combination of all of those things. So, we talked about the challenges of the granting councils. They are organized around disciplinary boundaries, and within each granting council, they have review panels, which are usually organized around very specific disciplines. To give you an example, I was talking today with someone about some of our quantum researchers who are developing technology that can be used for imaging brain cancers. And so they're working with clinical researchers. Do they apply to NSERC because they're engineers and physicists working on quantum technology? That's what the NSERC funds, or do they apply to CIHR because they're doing clinical research? It's kind of falls through the cracks. And there are these new programs like CFREF and the New Frontiers in Research Fund, but they're very large scale programs. And if you're just that individual researcher with this great idea, you can't easily get that funded. And to build on this a little further, I think our other challenge for our researchers, we talked a lot about funding, but I think as you're hinting at, we do have a lot of complexities with our funding mechanisms, a lot of different kinds of forms, you can call it bureaucracy, that researchers have to fill out. We have security considerations now that researchers working in certain areas and with certain types of partners have to work on, which universities, we very much support the security considerations, but the implementation is creating a new set of challenges for our researchers, new sets of forms and hoops that they have to go through that they don't see in other countries. And so when we talk about the potential for the brain drain, it's going to be a combination of the funding and these bureaucratic hoops that our researchers have to go through.
Dr. Patry, I guess I was quite concerned. I know when you talk about brain drain, I said on the previous presenters, my two nephews, well, one's getting his PhD and the other is a master's, and they both went to the States, and I don't see them coming back. You had said that we have fallen behind so far. Is there any way of catching back up again, or is this we're basically beating the dead horse because there's no way we can compete any longer with these other national countries?
No, I think there's a way of competing, and thank you for that question. I think maybe I should qualify. We've fallen behind dramatically in the business expenditure in R&D. In the higher education expenditure, we're still there, but over the last 20 years, when you look at what I said, the pressures in the system, which is inflation plus growth, the available funds, what I call the normalized funding, is decreasing. So what we're calling for is essentially a significant investment that goes beyond inflation. We have to address inflation, but we also have to address growth, and we have to address competitiveness. If we want to be competitive, then we're going to have to and ensure that research and innovation takes place in Canada, and we should. Then obviously we need to invest. And when we invest $1 in a researcher, when we give Dr. Pomeroy $100,000 to conduct his research, it's not going to pay his salary like it is in the US, but it is going to pay for his graduate students. So he takes that money and passes it on to graduate students and postdocs. So you're creating jobs essentially, and at the same time, you're educating the workforce of tomorrow. There's a perception that that money it disappears in the system, it is essentially close to 80% of the funding that a researcher receives goes to support their graduate students and their postdocs. So I think there is an opportunity to be competitive because we do have areas of excellence that are extraordinary. Dr. Pomeroy mentioned water. It's also my own area, and we can point to so many developments in water technology, in water treatment, wastewater treatment, water security, AI, quantum, advanced manufacturing, etc. So there are agriculture. There are some fantastic areas of expertise, but remember the 3 points that I mentioned earlier in terms of the focus, and that's also an important area to look into for future development.
Thank you kindly. We are going to move on to the last questions from MP Lauzon for now 4 minutes.
Merci, Monsieur le Président.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This is a historic opportunity for me to participate in a new committee on science and research. It is a great pleasure. My first question is for Dr. Pomeroy.
National Cattle Feeders Association this morning were explaining to me to be have difficulty they face with drought in the prairies. I also met with the UPA that faced the same challenge here in Quebec with the floods. How could you expertise, which is in the study of water and more broadly in climate change, allow Canada to remain competitive in cattle farming, in agriculture in general, and more precisely in rural areas?
Thank you for the question. It's one of the things I conduct research on is the water footprint for beef, for cattle, and whether it's providing water for them for drinking or water for the feed for the animals, and then also making sure we dispose of waste appropriately. With rapid climate change and what worries me about climate change more than other things are what Jim Bruce described as the razor, which is water, the extremes of drought and flooding. And our farmers fluctuate between flood and drought, sometimes in the same year within the same province. But the story in the last year has been extraordinary drought. We're in a North American drought. In Canada, it's extended from Vancouver Island into southern Quebec, even a little bit into the Maritimes. And this week, in southern Alberta, there was a massive dust storm in February. This is unprecedented. If you go back to the dirty 30s, they don't talk about winter dust storms, but this is what we're seeing now. So we have a project called Agricultural Water Futures, which is studying the water footprint of various crops. We're looking at new crops that are spreading northwards as the climate warms and what their water use and requirements are. We're also looking at how to manage soils better, how to trap snow when it's available for water supply, looking at tillage systems, and looking at mountain water supply and other water supplies for irrigation. Both Alberta and Saskatchewan have proposed massive irrigation systems. We have to make sure there's enough water to do this and that it's available through the longest droughts, and there is also water for ecosystems, indigenous communities, the cities, and hydroelectric and other purposes. So it's a very challenging time. Canada's agricultural water tie-in could be even more important in the future as the rest of the world loses its ability to produce food reliably. We will have stresses and difficulties, but we will be relatively better off than many areas, including the Midwestern United States, as one example.
Well, thank you very much. This is a complete answer. Monsieur Patry,
Mr. Patry.
Unfortunately, we're at the time of adjournment.
Oh my God.
It went really quick, and I appreciate everyone's patience tonight. And on behalf of all members,
thank you.
We'd like to thank our presenters in the first panel and the second panel. It is a historic night, being the first time having witnesses at this committee, and I've been honored to chair this. And now, it being the time of adjournment, not seeing any other business, this committee will stand adjourned until Thursday.
Thank you very much for the opportunity.
Thank you.